Good job counting, Joey. Thank you. I need it. We're going to call the meeting to order, and I'm going to call the roll. Alderman Barnhill.
Present.
Vice Mayor Blanton.
Here.
Alderman Hanson.
Here.
Alderman Peterson.
Here.
Alderman Berger.
Here.
Alderman Brown.
Present.
Alderman Potts.
Present.
And Alderman Baggett, and the
Present.
mayor's here also. So I think Mr. Stuckey want to make an introduction before I go to citizen comments.
I do. Thank you and good evening. I want to make an introduction of our new management fellow. His name is Chris Franklin, and yes, he's working in Franklin and has been raised in Franklin, so fittingly named. Chris, say hello. Hello. Chris joins us. He has worked extensively with the city of Brentwood and rose up there through the ranks to be a supervisor, has pursued his master's in public administration, and wants to work more in the city management field. And so we were thrilled to bring him on board. You may ask about Jamie Ewald, who'd been in that position briefly. She's now transitioning into the organizational development position that we approved in the budget within the Human Resources Department. So let's welcome Chris aboard and congratulate Jamie on her new position. So welcome, Chris.
Okay, we have one citizen comment card tonight on an item not on the agenda, and I would ask that Sarah Critchlow and Carla Parker, is Carla here too? Yeah, there's Carla. Come on up and I'll give you a few minutes to make a few comments. And as they're coming up, if you plan on speaking, on being here for any of the items from 4 on, it's going to be probably about an hour, not to scare you away, but I think the market analysis is going to take about an hour, item number 3.
Oh, I'll share. Coming down, coming down. Let's go down.
Thank you so much for letting us come and speak with you again. I'm Sarah Critchlow, and this is Carla Parker, and we came a few months ago. I've lived in this area for 27 years, and we came and talked a little bit about the giving machines that we were hoping to bring to Franklin. What we just handed to you were the cards that were in the machines last year of items that people could purchase, and we were able to raise about $200,000 for local and international charities. So we're hoping to bring these here to Franklin. I'll let Carla just tell a little bit more.
Yes.
So it's good to be back here with you.
Not sure if I can manage the mic here. So each of your little packets are a little bit different because each organization had 5 items. So you all have a little bit different, but maybe one from each organization and one of the local or the global nonprofits as well. But just wanted you to see what drops in the machine. And each of the nonprofits gets to choose those 5 items. We ask them to get a varied price, so there's low range items and whatever they need, but at least something that's under the $10 range and the $20 and $30 kind of thing. But just wanted you to see what was in there last year. We had one thought too as we were coming before you again. It's been nice to get to know your names and your faces and to think more about how we could share this with you. But one thing that came to mind to me was a night I was at the machines when the Isom family came up. And it was Zeph and Allie Isom and their daughter Memphis came. She was 10 years old. And Memphis had decided she wanted to put money in the machine, but she didn't have any money. So she did a fundraiser. She went to Nolensville's Facebook page, is it 411 or 441, whatever they do for the Facebook, and she decided she'd become a chocolatier. And she advertised that she would sell little boxes of chocolate, caramel dipped chocolates. Within an hour, she had 100 orders. And she had to stop because that would take a while for her to manage. And she came down to the machines and put in $1,100 for a 10-year-old. And as I was standing there the night she came, we actually had some media there that night, and they're like, who is this little girl? Because she kept clicking buttons. I'll take one of those and one of those. And then she saw them all drop one at a time. And to her, she was so excited. I wish I could show you the video. She's just squealing, and her little siblings were as well. And we asked her why she did it. And she said lots of people don't have food to eat or a bed to sleep in and different things. And she understood something that maybe not all children understand. And so with the ISOM's help this year, we want to have some human interest stories as well and encourage families to not only come to the machines, but make it a family experience, and we have time ahead of time to do that. So we hope to encourage that through their example and others, and just one example of what can happen at the machines. So that's all we have to share, really, unless you have questions for us.
I guess one other thing, since meeting last time, we have talked with F&M Bank, and they're very in favor of it. They wanted to see what you all think. They are actually owned by the Stanton Group, and they said, depending on your opinion tonight, they think they would be in favor of it as well. We want to do it about 6 weeks. Each of you should have received emails from nonprofits that received the help last year and just how it was such a benefit to them. So it can be great. All the fees are covered. It can just be a great community event, and we feel like it's enough a way. In other cities, they've had to use the sidewalks owned by the cities and have been given that approval, and we just think it can be great for these nonprofits in Franklin. Does anyone have any questions?
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sarah. Carol. Carla. Okay, we'll continue to move on. And we're going to have a discussion regarding the proposed downtown statue in honor of Jimmy Gentry. And so,
Go ahead and come in. So. Yeah, right. We start the meeting at 4:30. There's a reason. So, for those of you who came tonight for other reasons, I'm glad you're here to be able to see this. You can almost get emotional looking at that picture. Almost everybody that has been in Franklin long enough has either been to Gentry Farm for a pumpkin, but for those of us who've been here longer, we had the pleasure of listening to Jimmy tell his stories. And I was telling Carrie today on the phone, who I'll introduce to you in a minute, you know, we as a community do such an incredible job of capturing our history and telling our stories. And a lot of that goes back to the Battle of Franklin, and I think this is that next chapter where we have to make sure that we capture the stories of the next generation. And Coach was a great, great friend, and he, for 2 decades almost, on History Day at Leadership Franklin, it was my favorite day. I think it was a lot of people, sat on the swing out at Gentry Farm and told stories from his life. Put that into a book that became a documentary, and lots of other different iterations throughout the community that you could see that. But when the Franklin Public Arts Commission was being formed, and I begged Ken to be on that, I had an idea for a piece of public art. And it had to do with Coach Gentry. And I told Carrie about that idea several years ago, and then she ended up being in the class of 2020 for Leadership Franklin, and said, hey, do you mind if we steal your idea? I said, absolutely not. Let's get it done. So I'm going to pass the baton over to Carrie for now and let her get on with this, and we'll try to be brief because I know there's a big agenda.
Yes, thank you, Brandy. I would like to introduce the class of 2020, the best class, I might add. Lance Jordan. Lance is the executive director of Waves, local nonprofit here. Stacy Downs, who is owner of Cobra Trucking, and of course our favorite, Andrea Johnson, who is executive director of the Williamson County Animal Center. Michael D'Amico, owner of D'Amico Frame and Art, is also a classmate of ours, and he was unable to be here today.
Well, Andrea. Green button means you're on.
Sorry. We don't have to operate these at the county. So,
Well, that was a dig, Eric.
no, it wasn't. No.
More self-reliant.
Yes. More technologically advanced. No, if you haven't participated in Leadership Franklin, all I can say is that you missed a treat getting to sit under the tree with Mr. Gentry, because I went in, I'd heard for years, you know, how wonderful History Day was, but I'm going to be honest, I've been in Franklin for a long time, and I thought, like, what could I really learn? But I left there, as Carrie pointed out to me many times since, I was in tears the whole time that Mr. Gentry was talking. And we had already talked about doing the statue, but after hearing him speak, I really was committed. I was really fully bought into the fact that there needs to be a commemoration here in Franklin for not just Coach Gentry, because I do think, obviously his family is a big part of Franklin, but that whole generation of young men who sat there on that wall watching for the bus, watching for their friends to go off to war, watching for people who came back from war. And we are not just a Civil War town. We have a lot of history here that I think this is part of that story. So I'm excited that we're reviving this project.
So, as these girls said, we got to sit there and listen to him on History Day, and we knew that this was something that we really wanted to pursue, and we wanted to hear it in his words, not just us coming to you all and speaking about what we wanted to see happen. So, thankfully, Carrie had the foresight of videotaping Coach Gentry talking about how important the wall was, and I know he's written about it, and there's been, it's well documented, but his words on this video that we have on the PowerPoint, I will say it's from a distance, so you'll have to listen closely to what he says. So.
In the movie, you talked a little bit about how you would go to downtown Franklin and sit on the wall outside the church. Yes, will you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, it's still there.
Yeah, it is.
And what she's talking about the five points in front. That stone fence, the rock fence around the First Presbyterian Church. That was a special place for several reasons. One reason is that sometimes the farmer would come into town to shop, the wives would shop, and they'd sit on the fence and wait for the wives. Only because some of them would sit on the fence with just loafers. They weren't doing anything. So they'd sit on the fence. And then the one that, every time I pass there, I think of this one. You sat on that fence, the bus pulls up, comes out, calls your name. I off the fence, going off the wall. That's where you were in the army. Get off the fence, you're on the bus, and take you off the camp. That's how I did it. Yeah. No telling how to do that process. Anyway, that's the wall. Other questions, anybody else? Yeah.
Yes, ma'am?
Okay. This next slide, and we leave that up there a little bit. In addition to the information you see on this screen, Scott Wise is from Clarksville, Tennessee. I found Scott while doing some research on local sculptures. His name and work came up several times. There's a wonderful video of Scott that is featured on the show Tennessee Crossroads. And after watching that video several times, it was very impressive. I brought it to my group, and we reached out to Scott. He was immediately interested in the project and drove from Clarksville to Franklin the following week. In addition to being an artist, Scott is a Clarksville firefighter of 25 years. He knows our very own chief over here. He and his wife visit Franklin often. Scott has researched Coach Gentry at great length and is extremely proud and grateful to be a part of this project for our community. The cost of the project will be $85,000. And speaking with a few potential donors, we have unofficially already raised $20,000 with just 3 donors. Once our fundraising efforts go public, we feel confident that we will not have any trouble at all raising the remaining $65,000.
You just got through some of the slides.
This is some of Scott's work. This is his studio in Clarksville. This is his work at Fallen Firefighter exhibit in Clarksville. Wait a minute, I'm sorry. I just recently found this out, but Sergeant Gomer, what's his name? Yes.
Yeah,
It's from
Gomer
Clarksville.
Powell.
He's from Clarksville. So that is a statue of him. And then John Montgomery. I've lost my notes here. Hang on. Sorry. Fallen Firefighters Memorial in Clarksville, Tennessee that Scott did.
So it's important for you guys to know that Jimmy was very aware of this project. He was very humble about it, and he said, well, you know it's not about me. He goes, the heroes were the ones that did not come back for more. And if you know Coach Gentry, that sounds just like him. But we were able, Carrie and the group went down and got some photos of him posing. The original idea was to have him on the rock wall sitting as if he would have back at 18 years old. But that actually did not happen, and Carrie will explain why just from the, it's also important to know that this was seen by the Historic Zoning Commission, and it was also seen by FPAC as we were moving the project along.
Next video? Yeah. This is also a project or piece of work from Scott Wise. As Brandy said, we had originally hoped that we could place the statue on the actual rock wall, but Scott came to town and inspected it and felt that the structure would not be stable enough to put the statue there. So he suggested we place the coach sitting on a bench directly in front of the rock wall. Coach Gentry will be in a different position. He won't be in that actual position, but he'll be sitting on a bench right there in front of the wall.
So if you remember, this was the class of 2020, so we all know what happened in 2020. Barreling down steam, getting this done, and COVID hit. This group actually did not get to finish their leadership class. Shortly after, the project just kind of stalled, and as we all know, in April, Jimmy passed away. Carrie picked up the phone and she's like, we've got to do this and we're never going to get it done. So this group, and we brought in Julian Bibb, because what project doesn't need Julian Bibb on it? Julian is the board chair for Leadership Franklin, so it's very important to have their buy-in. But of course, Leadership Franklin is not set up to be a pass-through for donations, because as you do your projects, they would have to be doing that for everybody who did a project. But there's a really neat organization who loves public art in Franklin, and our partners are going to be in the next slide. So we reached out to Mindy, and of course, Franklin Tomorrow has agreed to be the vehicle that accepts these donations. So any donation that's made will be tax deductible. Also, Coach Gentry was a coach at Brentwood Academy, at Battleground Academy, and at Franklin High School. We have been able to reach out to Battleground Academy, and Candy Sullivan's here on their behalf, who will help us also reach out to their alumni. We don't feel like the fundraising part's going to be a hard pull, but it's awareness. And also, the reason why we're here tonight is because at the end of the day, as this is done, it will become property of the city of Franklin. It's kind of those public-private partnerships that make things happen around here. So we're very excited. There will probably be a resolution, I'm told from Eric, that'll just kind of give your blessing. And then we will have the modern-day link where people can donate. If there's somebody who feels so led that wants to write a check, we can take that and hold on to it. We do need to get a deposit to the sculptor, and would love to do that in the next little while. So Carrie, you want to talk about the location? We're almost done.
Yes, the next slide shows the City of Franklin Parks Department helped identify this site. And again, as Brandy mentioned, upon completion, the statue will be owned and maintained by the City of Franklin.
So Lisa said there is a bench there now, but if you can see on the lower slide, closer to the corner, there is a bench, so it'll be placed down further. Lisa Clayton suggests we do an 8-foot bench. That way there's room for people to actually sit beside and have a photo op or things like that. So it was really great to have a partner in them, because they definitely know where the places and spaces are for this type of statue. So last slide. We hope to have other signage, but for now, there will be a plaque next to the statue, probably not on the ground like you saw with the foot, but somewhere we're still working on. It will state the statue is in the likeness of Franklin, Tennessee native and World War II U.S. Army veteran Jimmy Gentry, as he reflects on the rock wall in memories of waiting there for the bus that would take him and many others off to war to fight for our country, many of whom would never return. So, Andrea's over there tearing up. It's a very poignant thing, and yeah, we know that, number one, he deserves it. His family continue to say, we want to make sure that people know that Dad wasn't the only soldier that left from Franklin. We understand that, but Jimmy Gentry is an icon in this community for far different reasons as well. So that is what we have, and we'd love to entertain any questions.
think you
Awesome.
filled us full.
Sir?
I think you filled us full.
Well, sorry, we went too long. I do
No,
have
no,
these
it's-
for each of the board, but I didn't want you to read them, so you can look at this later.
Okay, thank you for that presentation and bringing back some memories. So we'll go to item number 2, which is City of Franklin Contract 2022-0141, an interlocal agreement between the City of Franklin, Tennessee and the Franklin Housing Authority designating the authority as a subrecipient of American Rescue Plan Act grant funds in amount not to exceed $1 million.
So this addresses 3 different projects with our partners at the Franklin Housing Authority. We had identified this when we were walking through the different options related to American Rescue Plan dollars. You may recall, we talked about the county doing $1 million and the city doing $1 million from that same pot of money to help support specifically water and sewer infrastructure that helped affordable housing. And that kind of checks 2 different categories within the American Rescue Plan framework, both water and sewer infrastructure as well as services to disproportionately impacted communities. So the county showed a preference for working with the Hill Project, and we know we're going to have plenty of opportunities as a city to do that as well. So we're glad to honor that request and focus our efforts on these 3 projects, which collectively represent 214 affordable housing units in our community and extend or enhance water and sewer infrastructure, particularly sewer infrastructure, that benefits these developments, but also have broader benefits to our overall sanitary sewer system. So this agreement just provides that, makes them a subrecipient, and provides the mechanism to get that, take care of that work and reimburse them for that as the work is completed. So I know we've got some folks from Franklin Housing here as well, if you have any questions, but this would move that partnership forward.
Everybody good?
I have one thing, no questions on this item, but I feel like we're getting a few of these from the different possible funds. And I guess I don't know if anyone else is in the same boat, but the running tallies of what's coming in and out of where, what other I think a refresher on that maybe.
Sure.
Even if it's via an email and a quick update here, but just.
Got a nice sheet
Oh,
for you
there
right
you go.
here.
All right.
We'll send this to you.
Yeah.
This is part of, and we still have about $3.5 million that is yet to be programmed from our direct city allocation. You may recall the last couple meetings, we've talked about money that's coming from that same source, but flowing through the state of Tennessee and the Department of Environment and Conservation. Of course, that's separate from this. So I'll be glad to show you this. There's still some programming remaining to be done. We've spent a little over $1 million. We've obligated some other elements. So hopefully that answers your question. We're glad to revisit it from there too.
Okay, item number 3 is a presentation of market analysis and feasibility study for potential commercial leasable space within the city in the new city hall. So Vernon, Mr. Gibbs, and Mr. Gibbs. Mr. Gibbs times 2.
I will just make a couple comments to start off and hand it off to Vernon to make the full introduction. But we've moved into the schematic design phase, and one of the things you directed us to do is to do a more involved assessment of the opportunity for commercial space to be incorporated in the City Hall project. And the first name that came to staff's mind was Mr. Gibbs and his firm, his team. And we were fortunate to secure them to help us understand the possibilities there and what that might look like. And so today we will have them share that expertise and their insights related to downtown in general, but the City Hall site in particular. And glad to have them walk through that. There may be some specific questions you have related to specific financial capacity. And I will say that would probably be a follow-up discussion because that's something we're reviewing with our financial advisor. It is not a traditional financing, both from a commercial side or from a public side, because it's going to need to be a blend of our traditional type of debt covering the public facility, along with something we would likely issue through the Industrial Development Board that would be a taxable issue. So we're still working through that framework and also what that capacity translates into given some of the report that we have there. So That's not something we'll be able to really delve into tonight, but their expertise is really on the impact and opportunity that exists here and to help us better understand that. So I'll hand that off to
And-
Vernon for any other introductions of the specific.
And I was
parts.
going to reaffirm kind of what you were going to say about the financial side of it. That's something we'll pursue with PFM and our financial advisor folks moving forward. But I think we're focused more on what the opportunities are as far as viable commercial or office space. So, Vernon?
Thank you, Eric, and good evening, Mayor and Alderman. As Eric alluded to, per your direction, we've have hired Gibbs Planning Group to perform a market analysis both on retail and office feasibility, and then with that, they did some pro forma for us. Gibbs Planning Group is a highly regarded consulting firm. They're one of the leading authorities on research and planning of historic commercial districts, one of the reasons why we wanted to include them. That includes neighborhoods and urban town centers. Mr. Gibbs founded his firm in 1988 and have served numerous jurisdictions, not only throughout the United States, but around the world. So without further ado, Bob and his son Andrew.
Thank you, Vernon, and thank you, Mr. Mayor and Councilman or Alderman, for inviting us to assist the city with the feasibility study. Our role is to objectively, as a third-party independent group, assess the market potential for new retail and restaurant space to be developed in the City Hall site, and to do the same with office, to see if there is a market for office. If so, what would the amount of it be and what would the rents be and all of that. We also took it upon ourselves to do an analysis for the downtown because this is integral to the downtown. So as a part of our scope, we've done a similar market analysis for new retail in the downtown. And then Andrew has done the office and the feasibility analysis to estimate what the revenues would be, what the costs would be. OHM Advisors gave us a lot of the cost numbers. And to see whether it would make money, whether it would be a negative cost objectively for the City Hall, for the city. Our analysis, the retail market analysis, is we're retained for an advanced market analysis. This is the same type of research that we would do for helping stores decide what market to go into, for shopping center developers to decide whether they should build a center, if not where, or if not why. And so that's what we have done. We are not here to tell you what you should do, of course, and we're not here to say that all of what's supportable will necessarily fit on the site. We're just here to tell you fairly objectively what the market would support. So if we could start, please. We found, as you already know, that Franklin is an extraordinarily beautiful city. It's exactly the kind of place right now that leading offices and retailers and restaurants want to locate to. They are leaving the suburbs and they very much want to be in charming historical communities like Franklin. Slide. The overall market area in the downtown is about 370,000 square feet. There's about that much retail in the immediate downtown, what you would consider the downtown. So it's a very, very large market. To put it in perspective, the Cool Springs Mall is about 1 million square feet. So you're about a third of the size of Cool Springs Mall. Next slide. In the downtown area, just on Main Street, there's about 120,000 square feet of space on the ground floor, right on the street. So that's about a third of your overall retail. Commercial. Of that commercial, we estimate that there's 80,000 square feet of shops and restaurants. So the rest of it is some sort of office or service. So the downtown currently is about 80,000 square feet, to put it in perspective. Next slide, please. Here's a view of what we consider the downtown in yellow, and then you can see the City Hall property in white to the right side. So that yellow represents about 120,000 square feet on the ground floor and about 80,000 square feet of retail. Slide. This, of course, is the City Hall property. This is the existing City Hall building. And the blue area is where we understand the city is considering building commercial. We understand that that will be a two-story commercial with office on the upper level and retail or commercial on the ground level. We have a conceptual plan. If you can put the slide on, please. There's a conceptual plan that we've evaluated to some degree, but not too much because we know the plan's in flux. The greater Franklin market is an extremely strong office and retail market, one of the strongest we've seen in a long time. That being said, there's a lot of competition here. The shopping mall, of course, the retail around the mall, West Haven, there's a lot of competition in this market. And if we know there's a strong market here, others will know that too. Next slide. One of our processes is to dig into the lifestyles and demographics of people that live and work and visit this region. We buy extremely sophisticated data on not only just incomes and such, but what kinds of magazines they read, where they go on vacation, very, very detailed information. And we now have access to where they live. So the circle in the middle is Franklin, the downtown Franklin, and those highlighted areas are where people that live that visited one of the stores in Franklin, one of the large stores in the Main Street. So we did that for a number of stores and restaurants. We were able to find out where people live that visit those restaurants. And it's quite large. It's a quite extended trade area. Next slide, please. This is our interpretation of that trade area. The green or the blue represents the overall trade area where we think that is the far reaches are of people that live in the region that would come here. We estimate people in that area might come here once a year on average. The white area represents our what we're estimating the primary trade area, and that's based on the dots and interviews and studies that we've done. The primary trade area has a population of 117,000 people, 66,000 households, and very high average incomes, $107,000 per year for the average household income. That's the average. And 70% have college degrees. These are the most ideal demographics that the restaurants and retailers are looking for today. That combined with the historic quality and walkability and the quality of life here really makes downtown Franklin extremely desirable places for new restaurants and offices to go to. Next slide, please. The market is a $4.6 billion market. The people that live and work within that white trade area last year spent about $4.5 billion shopping and dining out. It's a very, very huge market. Now, of that trade area, that's the spending. We analyzed what the sales were. So our job is to look at the spending, and then we got data on what the actual store sales are. And there's a gap between what's spending, and in this case, the spending is up here and the sales are way down here. There's a very considerable gap. Our job is to estimate by each category how much of that gap is realistic for the downtown and the city hall to site to support. We generally are estimating that this downtown could capture about 1/2 to 3% of that gap. So we're still assuming that 97 to 99% of that spending potential is going to leak out of the downtown. We're being fairly conservative on what we think you can capture of that. Next slide. This is what we found that the downtown can support today in terms of retail, 52,000 square feet of new retail shops. And that would include a specialty bookstore, specialty foods like produce or cheese, things like that. A department store goods, not a department store, but the things you would buy in a department store like housewares and things. A specialty gourmet grocer, home furnishings, a small boutique pharmacy. As you probably know, the pharmacies right now are building 1,200 to 1,500 square feet boutique pharmacies. Shoes, handbags, toys, hobby, sporting goods, and even a hardware store. So this is what we think realistically is supportable in the general downtown. Next slide, please. And we estimate about 21,000 square feet of new restaurants. And that includes breweries, pubs, 1 to 2, 2 to 5 new full-service restaurants, 5 to 8 quick-service restaurants, and bakery, coffee, ice cream type spots. And I know you have a lot of ice cream store here. In fact, Cool Ones is a Michigan ice cream store, so we're very proud of it. Altogether, that's 9 to 17 new restaurants. And this is what's supportable. Again, we're not saying you should build 9 to 17 new restaurants. And this demand could be absorbed by existing businesses. An existing restaurant could expand, it could have longer hours, it could make a bigger store. So these are businesses that are supportable new, or that could be absorbed by existing businesses. Next slide, please. So all in all, we found that currently today, we think realistically the downtown can support about 73,000 square feet of new shops. Now, a footnote, the downtown is 80,000, we estimate. So the downtown has the market demand to double its size, to double the number of stores there. There's not room to do that, but if there were, the market is strong enough to really double what's there right now. And you're seeing that currently there's a number of really high-profile retailers that have recently deployed stores on Main Street, and our data shows that there's a number of other ones that would like to if the space were available. That retail would generate $25 million a year in new retail sales, and it would represent 16 to 28 new businesses overall. So very, very strong market, one of the strongest we've seen for a small town like this. And I think part of we would say that you're technically what that means is you're overperforming. And part of that is this is an extremely strong region without a lot of small walkable downtowns of this quality. There are several. But in a lot of ways, your market is the entire region. People are coming here when they want a nice dinner, a nice walkable environment. Next slide, please. Our second job was to look specifically of that, what would work at the City Hall expansion site. And that's shown in purple. We understand that the current thinking is that the space would be 38,000 square feet on 2 levels, 18,000 of retail, and then 18,000 of offices on the upper level. The site is not on the square, but it's on a very busy intersection. 3rd and Church is an extremely busy intersection, and for a lot of businesses, they would really prefer to have that frontage. So it's not on Main, but it's not totally negative that it's not. We calibrated that for this location. Also, there's plans for a park and a square at that corner, which would be very attractive for a coffee shop or a bakery or a small restaurant or a small cafe. So the site, we think, has a lot of merit where it could be located, but really the whole City Hall, there's advantages and disadvantages for each location. Next slide, please. The City Hall, of course, is part of a very beautiful historic neighborhood. This is a view of the City Hall from the neighborhood. And we don't usually recommend things, but because it's such a historic neighborhood, we really looked into businesses that would serve the neighborhood, that wouldn't be detrimental. So that could be a small bakery, a small specialty grocer, maybe a barber, things that would be attractive to the neighborhood. And it's also, of course, very walkable. Next slide. We defined what we call a local trade area for the City Hall site, and that's shown in white. And what that means is we set the trade area of where people could walk or ride a bike easily to the City Hall site. So we're not assuming that you're having the trade area all the way up to Nashville. We're assuming the City Hall site would be a very walkable location, which is very popular right now. A lot of the new towns are being built with little neighborhood retail, and they're building that instead of even a golf course because people like walking to get a cup of coffee or whatever. So this is our primary trade area, our walkable trade area, and it has a population of 65,000, 18,000 households with a very high average household income, 116 and 60% graduate or college degrees. Again, like the overall profile, these are very highly desirable, and of course there's a lot of workers that are within an easy walk of the downtown area. Next slide, please. We're projecting that that you can support 15,000 square feet of new retail and new retail on the site right now, and that would include These would be services that would include a barber, a cleaner, financial services, fitness, frame, hair salons, things that you would see on a local neighborhood center. We also projected what sorts of retail, and that would be 7 to 11 businesses. Next slide. We also found, though, that you could build a conventional retail on the site. That would include a bookstore, again, department store types goods, a florist, a very small gourmet grocer, a very small boutique pharmacy, several full-service restaurants, quick casual restaurants, and a bakery and coffee shop. So the site would support, the first level would support about 15,000 square feet, and these would be really local serving businesses in which we think most of the customers would come within a bike ride or a walk. Now, that being said, tourists like to go where the locals go. So if you had a great coffee shop or a great bakery, it's highly likely that out-of-town visitors would know about that too, and you probably would have others coming there. Next slide, please. The demand, we think, for the City Hall site is up to a 3,000 square foot specialty gourmet grocer that would have baked goods and specialty produce and such. Next. It would include a very small specialty bookstore, and that could specialize in a certain category like children's books or other types of categories. Next slide. A strong demand for a small florist, and which is a great amenity for a neighborhood. Next demand. A fairly large bakery, and it would probably have to specialize either in breads or desserts of something of that nature. Next slide. Again, specialty foods. Our demographics show that the Franklin people eat a lot, and you have a healthy appetite. So, so that could be a specialty cheese shop or a meats or produce, something like that. Next slide. And again, a very small boutique pharmacy would fit in there. There's a lot of pharmacists that are retiring and they're opening up their own specialty store, and they give really, really good service, and then really nice drugs that they prepare there. Next slide. Again, 2 to 4 small restaurants, 4,200 square feet. And all in all, the first level we think could support 15,000 square feet of new retail and restaurants, up to 16 to 26 new businesses, and which is quite strong. We were very pleasantly surprised to see that there's such a strong demand. The first floor, again, is programmed right now for about 18,000 square feet, so that could fill the entire first floor. Next slide. Andrew's going to talk about the office demand. Should we take questions now, or? No. Okay. Okay.
The second part of our scope was to evaluate the current fundamentals of downtown Franklin's office market. And as part of that scope, we really looked to estimate how much additional office space could be supported downtown Franklin, as well as specifically at the City Hall site. Next slide, please. We estimate the downtown Franklin office market to encompass about 500,000 square feet of office. And the way we define this is looking at about a half a mile ring around downtown Franklin. So not just Main Street, but as well as several blocks outside of Main Street. Next slide, please. To put that in perspective, we estimate about 12 million square feet of office space is within the city limits of Franklin. So a big component of this is going to be in the Cool Springs corridor, much larger traditional suburban office campuses. Downtown Franklin really acts as more of a boutique office market, slightly different type of tenant base with more local service-oriented tenants, a lot of high-tech startup businesses as well. And just to put that in perspective, that's about 4% of the total city's inventory is downtown Franklin. And about 100 million square feet resides within the city of Nashville. Next slide, please. So the city of Franklin's vacancy rate is very, very tight. What we mean is it's very low relative to the city of Nashville and the city of Franklin. I'm sorry, the downtown vacancy is very low relative to the city of Franklin and the city of Nashville. And so as you can see in the slide, the green bar is downtown Franklin, and vacancy rates for office space really peaked in 2009, 2010, around 12%. Still a little bit lower than the city of Franklin, and came down significantly over the last 10 years. Not a lot of supply was built downtown Franklin, and then vacancy rates trended up a little bit starting in 2017, 18, 19 with the addition of a couple new office developments, and then came down pretty significantly as those developments got leased up. So overall, the downtown vacancy rate is 2.5%, which is significantly lower than the city of Nashville at 11% and the city of Franklin at 13%. Next slide, please. So just to put that in perspective, this 2.5% is a very low number to see. It's very unusual to see office market with a vacancy rate of really below 5%. Typically, an office building is considered stabilized if it's occupied at 95%, so 5% vacancy. Typically, we would see office vacancies in the range of 7 to 8%, and just the U.S. is around 13% right now. So 2.5% vacancy rate suggests that there's significant pent-up demand for office space, Class A office space downtown. Next slide, please. So this next slide, the blue charts are the average rents, estimated rents for downtown Franklin, and the red bar is the vacancy rate, the occupancy rate for downtown Franklin. And as you can see, since 2012, rents have steadily been increasing quite significantly. Starting in the low 20s, they're up to about $35 on average today. This would be the average estimated market rent across all building types, so Class A, new construction, as well as older buildings from early 1900s. And so that $35 represents the rent per square foot per year. And the average, as I mentioned, the average occupancy rate is about 98% for the city downtown. Next slide, please. So based on our analysis, we estimate there to be additional demand for about 50 to 65,000 square feet of Class A office space downtown. And the way we determine this is looking at how much is currently supportable today based on the current market fundamentals, so based on the vacancy rate, as well as looking at future job growth to occur in downtown Franklin, the broader Nashville area. And then what we look at is how much typically is demanded per square foot of office-using jobs. And so we think, based on those two metrics, that 50 to 65,000 square feet could be supported over the next 5 years in downtown Franklin. Next slide, please. The City Hall site is about 38,000 square feet of gross buildable area. It's about 36,000 square feet of net leasable area. And so we easily think that about if the City Hall site was to be all office, it could be absorbed on that property, about 38,000 square feet. Next slide, please. We project Class A office rents to be in the range of $45 to $50 in downtown Franklin. Rents are very difficult to really track. Often a lot of the leases are private. Spaces are very different. Usually there's a allowance that comes with these rents that allows tenants to spend money on carpeting and paint and fixtures called tenant improvement dollars. But overall, we think Class A office space is around 45 to 50. And we estimate that rents would be about $45 at the City Hall site per year per square foot. And we estimate this to be gross rents. So what that means is that the tenant is not responsible for paying any operating expenses. That all falls on the landlord. Next slide, please. So the last part of our scope was to take both of these market studies and put together a pro forma that projects out cash flows for this City Hall development, assuming they were to develop 38,000 square feet of speculative office and or retail space, and to look at what would the projected income be over the next 20 years and the operating expenses, and then run a couple different financing scenarios to look at what would the cash flow be after debt service, and how could they pay that off? Next slide, please. So development costs can be tricky to underwrite at this stage just because we're dealing with very high-level floor plans. However, based on the information we have, which we received through some local partners like OHM, we estimate that to develop the 38,000 square feet of speculative office and retail space, so excluding the City Hall portion offices, it would cost about $25 million, which comes out to about $700 per rentable square foot, based on about 36,000 square feet of rentable square footage. Next slide, please. The way those costs break down is about $19.5 million would be the hard costs. So what we mean by hard costs are costs to build the actual structure. About $5.6 million would be budgeted for soft costs. These would be all the additional expenses that are required for architecture, engineering, financing fees are a big component of this as well. Next slide, please. So it's very difficult to underwrite retail rents just because, as I mentioned earlier, rental rates really differ based on the size of the space, based on the amount of tenant improvement dollars that are given to tenants, based on the location. We estimated $35 per square foot per year is what we used, and net. Net means that the tenant is responsible for paying all of its property management expenses and utility expenses, which we estimate to be about $14 per year. For office, as I mentioned earlier, we underwrote $45 per square foot per year. It's important to mention that these numbers are in 2022 dollars, so current rents today. We've been advised that it's going to take about 4 years for the City Hall site to be developed. And so what we've assumed is that these rents will grow at 3% per year. And so by the time that the City Hall site is fully developed, instead of renting at $35 for retail, we're renting at closer to $40. Similar for office, instead of renting at $45, we'd be renting closer to $51 per square foot. Next slide, please. Based on those two assumptions, we would estimate that the City Hall would generate about $1.8 million in total revenue. This would be in 2026, so inflation-adjusted revenue. And the bulk of that is, as I mentioned, those two retail and office leasing, plus the reimbursable expenses that the retail tenant is paying for managing the property and their utilities. And then we also took a 5% vacancy number, which is pretty market standard to assume that once the office is stabilized, you're going to have turnover in between leasing, and that's going to average about 5% per year over a longer lifetime of managing the property. Next slide, please. We estimated about $500,000 it would cost about $500,000 to operate this property per year, which is about $13 to $14 per square foot. This is, again, in 2026, inflation adjusted, which would be about a 12% premium to what the cost would be today. Next slide, please. So the operating expenses would include really everything associated with managing and operating this property. And so that would be property taxes that we've estimated. There's a property, assume that you hire a third-party property management firm that's charging 3% per year of gross revenue to manage the property. All your utility expenses for gas, electric, all of the repairs and maintenance associated with it. You're going to have payroll associated with managing that property. We've assumed that it would be staffed with a property manager part-time for managing the property. You'd have a maintenance manager on site as well. And so based on the aggregate of all of those expenses, we estimate about $500,000 per year. And so that comes out, like, as I mentioned, about $13 per foot, which is pretty consistent with other office spaces, other Class A office spaces in the area. Next slide. Oh, sorry. Go back, please. So Based on those two key inputs, the revenue and the expenses, we project about $1.3 million of annual income here in 2026 inflation-adjusted dollars. So this would be before paying any debt service at all. Next slide, please. So there's a variety of assumptions that we can model for how this project would be financed. Typically, if this was a market rate development, it would be financed at 65% of total construction costs. I understand that it's not, and the city has different means of borrowing. So we ran just a number of different scenarios. As you can see at the top there, the first is assuming a 4.5% interest rate. The second is a 5% interest rate. And then we said, well, what would happen if we finance this, if the city financed this at 65% loan to cost? So they borrowed 65% of the project costs and then used cash on their balance sheet to finance the remaining 35%. And then what would it look like if they borrowed 100% of the project cost? So if they borrowed $25 million to finance the project. And so the next column over is what the annual debt service would be based on a 20-year loan amortization schedule. So what that means is how much would it cost to service the debt if we wanted to pay off that debt over 20 years? And so that cost increases as your interest rate increases as well as you move up the loan to cost. So at 65% loan to cost, it's about $1.25 million a year. And at 100% loan to cost at 4.5%, it's about $1.9 million per year. And what that implies is that at the end of that 20-year period, there will be no more debt on the property, and so it'll be owned free and clear, and your NOI will go back up to whatever it is before paying debt service. And so the last column in that table is looking at what the cash flow would be after debt service, after paying debt service. So taking that $1.3 million and then subtracting out what the annual debt service would be in those different scenarios. And so that's where you can see there's quite a wide range of outcomes based on the variability of the financing cost. So starting at 4.5%, it would be what would be defined, I guess, as cash flow positive $20,000 per year, assuming it was financed at 65% loan to cost. It would cost, if you financed 100% of it, it would cost the city to put in $650,000 per year. So that would be in excess of all the revenue coming in and paying the operating expenses. The city would have to contribute an additional $650,000 per year to service its debt service. If you go up to 5% interest rate, that would increase to $730,000 per year. I think it's important to note that the biggest part of this equation also is that you're paying down your debt service. So you've got two components to that. You have your interest, which is an expense, and then you have your principal being amortized. And so if you were just to look at what your cost to service the debt from an interest perspective, interest only, this would be cash flow positive. But my understanding was that the city would prefer to see an amortization schedule here. So that's why we've included this. So, but again, just to summarize, if you were to look at borrowing 100% at 5% interest rate and to strip out the principal amortization, which is increasing your equity in the asset each payment you make, it would be much higher number. So that concludes that, I believe. Next slide, please. We'll open it up to some questions. Thank you.
Oh, good presentation. Questions? Comments?
I've got to make a comment on this. I'm thrilled with your presentation. Thank you. It was very insightful. I guess my question is, considering the ground floor is always the prime retail space and the high dollar lease space as well, where did we come up with the stack in the back of the building and not use our complete ground space along 3rd Street in lieu of that?
Before I answer that, we actually estimated that the rents, when you adjust for the operating costs, are almost the same. The rents per square foot net would be pretty close to the same for the office or retail, which is highly unusual, but this is such a strong market. Regarding whether it's located on 3rd Street, we really don't feel comfortable addressing that. We're looking at the plan we were given.
Okay.
And I can't even really say where the highest rents would be. I would take a little forensics analysis to say that. But the corner has a lot of merit, being on a square and such. There's street parking around it. Well, the existing plaza, I mean the new plaza, not the square, excuse me. So I can't say for sure what would be the best part of the building. We could do that if you want us to. But it is a good location. The office and rent are almost the same. You could rent the whole building out to office if you didn't want to have any restaurants or cafes there. You really have a lot of very good market choices. I do want to emphasize what Andrew said too, is that if you did have the higher interest rate, there would be a annual cost to the city of about $700,000. But that includes paying off the loan. So that's paying the debt, but then you're also paying yourself because you're paying the loan off. So it's kind of maybe not a easy to understand number.
And I think one assumption that wasn't in there, which was something we had spoken about earlier too, is the master lease concept, which takes the city out of the landlord position to where we're just collecting the check, and ultimately the person that's holding the master lease takes on all those expenses, the property management, so the city's actually only collecting a check and not actively involved in managing the property. But thank you, it was fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is that not what you were including whenever you spoke about the management fee or the property management, or is that a little different?
What would happen in the scenario that they proposed, it assumed that we, the city of Franklin, would own and operate the property ourselves. But under a master lease concept, we have the exact same space, but we do a master lease of the entirety of the
I got
space
you. I
to an
understand
outside
now.
company, who then assumes any loss in market rent rates, who assumes any maintenance on the property. They're responsible for taxes and other expenses, and not us. We just get a check.
So there's a cost associated with that. Is that cost factored into what you gave us, or would there be additional expense with putting that responsibility on a third party?
So we assume that a third party would manage the property, but would not be responsible for the actual expenses and would not have to manage the expense and revenue coming in. But, the city could manage this themselves as well, and, collect that 3% fee, and that would be a savings for the city. But we've assumed best practices that this would be outsourced to a third-party property manager.
It would be safe to assume that our check, the money that Alderman Hanson's speaking of, would be, just for our analysis purposes, would be the revenue minus the expenses that you've got, because someone's going to pay it. So, and there's probably some profit margin there for that master lease, so it would be around the net. Is that safe to say?
Yeah, that's right. So if you were to master lease this, the assumption would be that it would be less revenue net to the city coming in, because there would have to be a profit for that master lease operator to make. So it's difficult to know exactly what that would look like, but that's the general concept.
Alderman Brown?
A question, a comment. First of all, thank you. I actually hope there's some property owners in the radius around downtown that heard your presentation, because there's some other areas I'd love to see get the attention that clearly the city needs. So first of all, question, when you talked about the percentage of sales that happened and you plotted that immediate trade area, what percentage of that was that local trade area, and what percentage was outside tourists. I didn't see that number in there.
We assume nothing for the tourist. That would be an addition. So this demand is
That's
all
a
based
big
on
number.
people that can ride a bike there or walk there. I think it's about 1.5 miles or so.
Everything we're looking at assumes zero tourism.
In the City Hall site, in the downtown, we did factor in workers and employees. I'm sorry, excuse me. In the citywide study, it assumed some tourists and a lot of workers. But in the City Hall site, no, we just made the trade area where people could comfortably walk or ride a bike.
I think that's a big number that's not in that presentation. So second comment, as a downtown business owner and office right across the street, the office thing really perplexes me a little bit. I realize we're in a really interesting time coming out of COVID. We're seeing more e-spaces open up. I see vacancies all around me, downtown office space that have been sitting vacant for quite a while. I hope that trend changes. So the number that you shared, it surprised me, but also a lot of optimism and hope in that number too. When you looked at those numbers and those trends, I know you accommodated inflation and all of that as you looked out at when the city site, but in terms of trends, in terms of what you're seeing in the marketplace, that seemed to be current state. Is there a thoughtfulness, and I'll be, I much like Gabrielle or Alderman Hanson, I guess I was under the impression we were going to take our entire first floor for retail and we were going to put City Hall on the second and third floors. I just assumed that was the best path, and I didn't realize we were going to be thinking about office space. So part of this is just me trying to recalibrate a little bit around the design and around the notion of office. But from a trend perspective, are we really going to see these numbers hold in 4 years, 5 years?
I'll let Andrew address that, but there is, we're projecting Class A office, which means you have modern fixtures, high ceilings. There's a considerable shortage for that. There's a lot of office that's great office, but it's not what some firms would want. So I'll let Andrew address that.
Sure. As you'd imagine, COVID has not been a friend to the office sector, broadly speaking, across the U.S. The vacancy rate is much higher in the suburbs and Cool Springs. That said, there's been so much growth happening within the broader Nashville MSA that has really offset some of those more COVID-related structural trends occurring. Now, our assumption is that that growth continues to happen, and it's very difficult to predict really how much growth will happen over the next 5 years. We have not assumed that we're going to be going into a deep recession. There's a lot of assumptions embedded in that. It makes it very difficult to predict the next 5 to 10 years. That said, a lot of the indicators suggest that this growth will continue within the broader Nashville MSA, and as a result of that, it will have spillover effects in downtown Franklin. So given just how tight the fundamentals are today at 2.5%, we do feel like the market could support some additional office space despite the broader negative sentiment occurring within the office market today. There's very few markets across the U.S. right now where you would be able to justify building speculative office space. Franklin is a small market, of course, but it's one of those exceptions, I would say.
Go ahead, Alderman Baggett.
A few things. I think one takeaway is, because I've heard other comments, we kind of anticipated, based on the programming that we've had on City Hall, that it's towards the rear of the, I call that the rear, but towards Church Street. I definitely have concerns about the retail being there on the corner. In any high capacity. I think the idea was maybe it was on up towards 3rd Avenue. And so I think what this tells me is that we need to think maybe the reprogramming of the building, this is not necessarily to you all, but the reprogramming of the building so that some of that retail might be closer to the square instead of down towards neighborhoods. The fact of the matter is we're going to use this as an office one day, and they're telling us that the office is bringing the same amount of rent as retail. Something to consider. Right. Although I think the second thing is activation of 3rd Avenue to some degree. We don't want this to be And I think I'll speak for the neighbors on Third Avenue. We don't want this to be the next hot, Detroit area in town where Third Avenue becomes, I don't know, Mayor Moore, you can speak to this, but your opinion on that. But I think we want the appropriate amount of activation, but also respecting that neighborhood. So I don't know if that is a reprogramming thing that needs to happen with where the retail might go. Last thing, and this is back to financials. And I think you made this point, but not everyone is in real estate, or numbers and all that. But not everyone is in real estate. We're paying down a $25 million building in today's dollars, even at the 5%. I'm sorry.
Sorry, we assumed a 12% contingency for inflation in that number as well.
What do you
The
mean?
25 million. So it's adjusted for inflation, that 25 million.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
Inflation in today's dollars for 20 years, the whole term of the amortization?
Sorry, the building cost for the actual development would just be inflation adjusted for 4 years.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm going somewhere else.
Yeah.
So where I'm going is, the 4% is absolutely right. Where I'm going is that at the 5%, $700,000, we're going to be pulling out of our general fund, per se, that is cash flow negative. If we were 100% financed, 5% interest rate, 700,000 times 20 years is, you do the math, it's about $14 million on the cost of the $25 million building. So we'd be paying $14 million. You're assuming a 4% interest or inflation rate of construction. Well, Microsoft Excel here, 4% over the 20-year period, the same cost of the bill. That's $29 million in construction cost inflation over the next 20 years. If we say we decide to build this in 20 years, $29 million more. So it's almost $50 million to build this in 20 years. And what we're working with here, check my math. I know Michael Walters Young's back there doing it himself. But the opportunity costs are huge. The opportunity costs of having someone pay us over the next 20 years for this, and this is the city citizens' most valuable asset. The opportunity costs of us not doing this are in the tens and tens of millions of dollars. And I think I know this is outside the box, but I appreciate the staff taking this on. Programming is key because we've got to keep the character of the neighborhood. We cannot have this be a shopping center. It must be appropriate, and that's why I think office might be more appropriate. Although spotty retail might as well. But I think staff needs to look at the opportunity cost, the whole cost, not just, oh yeah, we're going to be coming out $700,000 a year for the next 20 years. No, we're also going to have the construction cost of inflation, the inflation adjusted cost of construction over the next 20 years, and that is going to compound, and it is going to be extremely expensive to do this add-on. And I would argue it might not ever get done. I don't know that in 20 years someone's going to spend $50 million on 38,000. I mean, I'm sure they are somewhere. But that's going to be a tough decision, and we're going to be kicking ourselves if we didn't do it now. Got to be right, though.
And the $14 million isn't all interest. A lot of that is going towards paying off the loan. So,
It'll be paid off.
so it's not.
One other point on that is, if we could go just to the last slide, please. Oh, it's okay. The numbers we're showing in that table of negative $700,000 per year, as well as the first year that property is leased up. So it's $1.3 million of income coming in. That is also going to be growing over time at 3%. And so as a result of that, the costs for debt service will be fixed. And so you'll actually have a lot of operating leverage there, where it eventually will become cash flow positive. I don't have the schedule in front of me as to when, but just it'll be a lot less. So the average number over a 20-year period will be a lot less than that 730,000.
Let me jump back to my caveat at the beginning of this discussion. We have some work to do with our financial advisor, with the structure involved, with the legality of how we get involved in a private development. So I appreciate the back of the envelope, but let's make sure we've got the, I's dotted and T's crossed about how this would work and what that looks like. So, I mean, the logic is sound, but the devil's in the details, so let us have that opportunity, and we'll bring that back with the work with our financial advisor. So before we have numbers that we throw out that we think stick, let's validate it, looking at the structure that we would likely have to use.
I've got Alderman Potts, and then I got Alderman Barnhill.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Number one, greatly appreciate the presentation. A lot of my comments have either been commented upon or asked, but I did have a question on slide 4. If we could go to slide 4 for just a second, and I just wanted to see if you could give us a little bit of information. As you were listing the 120,000, go up one. Oh, wait a second.
You're trying to make us dizzy, so we
Yeah,
don't
there we
think
go,
there,
right there.
Alderman Potts.
As we looked at this slide, if y'all could maybe explain this one just a little bit more, because you've got the highlighted areas, and the way you first introduced this was the area of downtown retail first floor inventory that you were analyzing. And I know that there was also another slide with the Kroger at the other shopping center. But I guess my question and comment is really driven by going northbound on East Main, 1 to 2 blocks north that's not highlighted in yellow. If you were to zoom that out just a little bit at the new retail and the new hotel, that there's new restaurant first floor, there's new, I like to say, updated restaurants right there at the what used to be the Boathouse and everything. Why y'all chose not to go that direction with that newer development?
We actually have a slide showing that.
Okay.
If you took the Main Street and a block in either direction, I think it was around 280,000 square feet. If you took all of the Main Street buildings, that Kroger slide, I think I put in the wrong image there. But if you took the Main Street and then you went back and forth all the way through, it's about 280.
370,000 for the whole downtown, including 2 or 3 blocks south.
Okay.
But that wouldn't include the Kroger shopping center. That's just in the core downtown.
But does that also encapsulate the antique district
Right.
and those things that go all the way to Margin?
And that kind of circles around what my question was, is as we look at the the retail space that's there, because it is so mixed. It's not new specialty boutique. It's a lot of historic in nature. It's a lot of small business that may not fit some of the descriptors that were listed there. But I do have concern, even though Alderman Baggett pointed out one of the things I was concerned about is on 3rd Street, I understood in my mind that we were looking at retail on 3rd with the potential of having the retail in addition to that on Church on the corner there. And this is the information that y'all were presented, but that's something that we definitely need to revisit. And I would defer to the local neighbors there and the concerns they might have about the high traffic. But the fact that, as we mentioned a moment ago, this did not account for any tourist numbers. This is simply local residents.
And the reason we put the yellow in is because people don't know what square footage is. So I like the Main Street because people know the Main Street here. That's about 120,000 on the ground floor.
Okay.
And about 80, that's an educated guess, 80 for retail. But the point is, the market is strong enough that you could really double that, roughly, just on the Main Street area.
Well, thank you for the details of the presentation.
Thank you.
Just to follow up on that very quickly, it doesn't even have 231.
I think what he's saying is this is not just what they studied. They studied everything. This is just highlighting that is what 120,000 looks like. They studied the whole downtown. Could you clarify? I don't think that got through.
I'm sorry, yes, we did study the whole downtown and went in every business, I think. And the Heritage Foundation did a survey for us, a business-by-business survey, which is fascinating about do they need to expand and all of that. So yeah, we did look at the entire downtown. This is really to help people understand what 120,000 square feet looks like.
Sure.
And, but I want to comment on one other thing. There's really all choices here. The whole building could be Class A office. It could be Class A office upstairs and the cafes, the coffee shops and bakery on the ground level. It could also be services on the ground level. It could be a hair salon or a yoga studio, really non-retail at all, but you could have the little neighborhood services, maybe a florist or such. So they're really, and they're all generating about the same rent. So it's really, there's really a lot of choices for you. We don't usually, especially now, we don't get to give up so many good choices, but there's really, market-wise, a lot of choices for the community to decide.
Alderman Barnhill.
Well, isn't what you just described what was here when the building was first built?
Yeah, that was, I think, a misguided phase in my industry. You know, we make a lot of mistakes, so.
You know, I think two things. I think we need to know the legal implications on this, because I think that's huge as to whether or not we go forward with this right here. And what we've done is we really wanted to look at the retail portion of this to see if it was favorable to the city to do something else with some of that property there besides what's already there. So I think those, before we do too much further on this, we need to know what those, what the legal ramifications are on that then. And, but no, I don't, you know, you're saying that we can build a 38,000 square feet for 25 million and you've got 12%. It's contingency in that 25 million? Is that what I'm
Yes, sir.
understanding?
Yeah, that was provided by a third party here, but yes. Again, I would say it's very high level just based on the floor plates we have. But we've included an inflation contingency of 3% a year, which comes out to about 12% over 4 years.
Well, isn't that quite similar to what we have in the hotel and the conference center? I mean, we own the conference center, but we don't do any managing or anything else. We just hopefully get a check once or twice a year.
Yeah, you get a certain percentage of the net profits at the end of that, operation. And you split it with the county.
And
'cause
we
we're
have
owners.
no expenses.
And that
Well,
works
no,
out.
that's
Now,
not really
you
true.
have the obligation to fill the gap if it's negative.
Okay,
We have been
well,
very
fine.
blessed for 23 years that all but 2 years it's been profitable,
Okay.
which quite frankly is unusual for conference centers, but we've been really, really fortunate in that regard. So you've got, in that situation, you've got an obligation. You are the kind of the last resort, and our fund fills the gap when COVID hits or some other economic slowdown might happen there.
But we're also putting back reserves for
Yes.
future maintenance on the building and replacement.
We are or they are.
We are.
We are, that's part of the formula.
And nobody's mentioned all the tax revenue coming in from the restaurants and the shopping. That's not accounted for in the calculations.
Okay.
Yep, I just have a couple comments.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Alderman Berger.
Yeah, there's, major problems with retail industry, but, we honestly, this is sort of my bailiwick, what you do, done a lot of market research. There is a lot of questions still to be asked here. First of all, we don't know where office is really going to go. But there's always going to be a need for some office. And we have a unique situation downtown, and as people come into our community and grow businesses and downsize businesses in not the business itself, but downsize the office element of it, I think you're going to have different scenarios for different needs. I think you're seeing that in probably some of the studies that you're doing. Parking, of course, is always the issue down here. Ground floor, to me, retail has got to be on ground floor. I personally don't want to see any office on first floor. I don't think in a market analysis way. I don't think in a projection way, business-wise, that's really a wise thing to do, unless you want to prove me wrong with some stats that I'm not aware of. But retail needs to be in there. That also could be services. That it could be retail and services on that first floor. Master leaseholder, to me, is a given. I don't want the city. Really don't want the city managing this. I'd rather pay the money and have a master leaseholder take care of everything, just write us the check. Now, we get down 4, 5, 6 years, and we want to take that over eventually. That could be a discussion, but we'd have to bring someone in to manage that. So to me, the only way to really do that and to do it right is a master leaseholder. And I think if we had retail, restaurants, retail on the 3rd Avenue area, we might have this entrance to come in, because you're going to have your board room on your first floor because of the people that come here. But all along 3rd Avenue, you can have retail, and that is a pull. You have to have a pull to get the people around on Church Street. If you have no pull, then those businesses could literally die in the back. That's sort of a red flag to me a little bit, by putting it all in the back. I don't like that idea, because you would have to prove to me that that could work, and usually in most cities, small cities, especially with Franklin being the size it is, I'm not sure that would work. So I have some concerns about that just being totally in the back. And I'd like to see it on the side, so you could actually use it as a pull push to the back.
Thank you.
Alderman Peterson?
Just one thing, I just heard parking then, and I was thinking that is something that we absolutely need to see what we can do. Because that's one of the complaints that's been around here for a number of years, and even more so, recently, that there's no parking. No parking. I know we're going to get some underground parking, but still, if you have these extra things, especially even things like office, you're going to have people that are going to be parked there all day long. And so let us also be looking at that as we go along.
Good thought.
And a lot of cities also provide for different scenarios for off-site parking for their employees, which I think is a smart thing to do. I think we need to be thinking outside the box and really tackling off-site parking for our major employees, whether that could even encompass the city as well at some time. But we have to, we have to make sure. And then, of course, at night, you have restaurants going, and you have certain elements in the retail or restaurants or eateries that they will be there in the day, lunch and all that. But, depending on the night, that's another pull, and then your parking frees up a lot at night for that. So that would be an element that we'd have to encompass in all that.
Thank you.
Okay, you ready to move forward? Gibbs father, son, thanks for your time.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to work with you. Thank you.
It was good this morning also.
Okay, consideration ordinance 2022-19, an ordinance to rezone 7.9 acres from Civic Institutional District to Residential R4 District for the property located south of Battle Avenue and west of Cannon Street at 1501 Figures Drive. Joey?
Thank you. The applicant is requesting to rezone the property that currently holds the Franklin Special School District Annex Building right off of Battle Avenue from Civic Institutional to the Residential 4 District. Envision Franklin places this property in the historic residential design concept. which states that infill development should maintain the established traditional residential character and reflect the scale of the surrounding neighborhood. So the R4 district is consistent with recommendations of Envision Franklin. Currently, there is no additional plan or development plan for this property, so anything other than just one single-family house would have to come back through the review process, either with a preliminary plat or a development plan and accompanying rezoning to plan district. So staff does recommend approval of ordinance 2022-19. Planning Commission recommended denial by a vote of 5-2.
Okay, I do see we have representatives from FSSD, and do y'all want to make some comments, please?
Yes, sir. First of all, thank you for letting us speak with you this evening. We appreciate it very much. My name is David Esslinger. I'm the Associate Director of Schools for Franklin Special School District, and I'm here with our board chair, Mr. Robert Blair, and board member, Mr. Tim Stillings, to my right. And we are here, as was stated, to ask for the rezoning of the central office annex property from CI to R4. The FSSD began conversations about the repurposing of the central office annex property about 4 years ago. It was quickly determined that the central office annex building did not meet the board's current needs and would require, at the time, an estimated $13 million to bring the building to FSSD standards and current codes. We first discussed demolishing the central office annex building and constructing a new central office complex, inclusive of a fenced-in transportation and maintenance facility with security lighting, as well as a new central office administration building on the site. This type of construction would have been acceptable under the current CI zoning. However, through several board work sessions and public meetings, the FSSD chose not to go this route due to the effect the fencing and the lighting and the 35 school buses would have on the quiet residential neighborhood, as well as the additional daily traffic of all the FSSD administration staff members who would be working on site. Therefore, the FSSD board decided to purchase 5 acres on Eddy Lane, already zoned as light industrial, where such a development would have little to no impact. Phase 1 of construction of the new FSSD central office complex is scheduled to begin this month. The FSSD intends to demolish the central office annex building and sell the 7.9 acres where the central office annex currently resides. The proceeds from the sale will reduce the amount of bond funds needed for current and future projects, inclusive of our new central office complex on Eddy Lane, and therefore saving the amount of interest paid by FSSD for years to come. Prior to listing the property for sale, the FSSD leadership met with the staff of the Franklin Planning Department to seek their advice and counsel on the most appropriate zoning for the property. We wanted to make sure that the future use of the property would protect the long-range goals of Envision Franklin, as well as ensure the use is contextual to the current neighborhood. The Planning Department staff encouraged our petition to rezone the property from CI to R4 and agreed that the R4 zoning was the most responsible way to protect the neighborhood. Based on this recommendation, we petitioned the Franklin Planning Commission to rezone the central office annex property from CI to R4 at the June 23rd Commission meeting. The request was presented and recommended by the Planning Department staff, but was denied. After hearing from a few local residents who opposed the rezoning and who mistakenly viewed the property as a community park, the Commission decided not to recommend the rezoning. We believe the Planning Commission did not receive a full picture of our intent for the property. If the property remains zoned as CI, the sale of the property opens the door to many possibilities that could be detrimental to the neighborhood. The FSSD remains a vital part of the neighborhood and is greatly interested in the future use of the property since Franklin Elementary School will continue to operate right next door. We understand the community's interest in green space and will continue to provide after-school access to Franklin Elementary's multiple playgrounds, basketball court, full-size soccer field, and paved track, as we've done for many, many years. We believe rezoning the property to R4 prior to its sale is in the best interest of the immediate neighborhood and the larger Franklin community, assuring that something contextual goes into the space after the demolition of the central office annex building. Therefore, we respectfully ask the Board of Mayor and Aldermen to accept the recommendation of the professionals of the Franklin Planning Department and elected members of the Franklin Special School District Board of Education and approve this property to be rezoned from CI to R4. Thank you. We'd like to entertain any questions you may have.
If I could just clarify before we get to the questions, R4 is are one of our residential zoning districts. That does not mean 4 units per acre.
Yes.
R4 is very contextual. Most of our historic neighborhoods in the downtown core are zoned R4, and any new development within the R4 district, the minimum standards are based on the average of what's existing around it. So 75% lot width, lot size, and in no case can a new lot be smaller than 6,500 square feet in R4 zoning, as well as any new home or any new residential lot would have to front onto a public road. So that would also have to be worked into whatever future plan is developed for the property. So it's not necessarily 4 units per acre. It is contextual to what's already existing in the neighborhood along Battle Avenue around Figure Street.
Go ahead, Alderman Barnhill.
So you don't want to sell the property, with the school on it, whoever buys it tears the school down, with the R4 zoning, they're allowed to develop the property under that zoning. Is that right?
It's not the school, it's an annex building in the open.
Well, I'm sorry, it was a school for a long time.
Yes, sir. Mr. Mayor?
No, it was a school for a long time, and I was there. Yeah, and it's, yeah, but no, we're not doing we now use it as the central office
Right.
annex, but the school remains in the community, and the school remains
building.
accessible. Yeah, Franklin Elementary School, which is up on the hill. So that remains open for students and all those in the neighborhood to use as a park and to also continue to just be a great neighbor. So we think
We
this
used to
is
use it for MAC.
MAC was the central office annex, which
Right.
we've moved. Yeah, because we needed, it was not conducive for MAC either. So after, as Dr. Esslinger mentioned, after looking at the assessment of the property, I don't think people wanted to wake up with 35 buses going back and forth at 5:30 in the morning. So we thought the best thing to do was to look at something that would be beneficial for Franklin Special and selling the property, but also benefit the community as well. And we think this is just the best route to do that. And we're willing to work with Planning Commission, neighbors. We fielded all of their concerns, and we're trying to address them as best we can.
So you want to sell the property on Highway 96 also?
Long-term, yes, sir. Not in the immediate future. We have to have a place to go first.
Yeah.
And the long-range plan is to build a central office complex on the Eddie Lane site, inclusive of all of our administrative positions. Right now, our leadership team is spread out across the district in any nook and cranny we can find, and the goal is to bring them to a centrally located office building where we can, I guess, work more effectively. And a bus and transportation depot as well. There'll be a facilities and transportation building on the same site over on Eddie Lane.
Go ahead, Alderman Bland, Vice Mayor.
I cut through figures sometimes during the day, but it's been a while since I've gone up that side street on Alicia. So Franklin Elementary, the playground starts, if you're looking at the school, say you're coming up Fairground and you get to the school on the left.
Coming up Fairground?
Yes,
School's on the
Franklin
left.
Elementary right now. You
Mhm.
come up Fairground, you pass NHC.
Correct.
You're with me?
Yes, ma'am.
And then you get to where it opens up where
Correct.
does
The track is off
playground-
the left.
The playground and all those amenities start there and go around the back of that school,
Yes, ma'am.
and then they don't come to the far end where Figures hits Alicia, correct?
Correct. Actually,
They do?
the front side of Franklin Elementary is on Figures Drive.
Okay.
So
The new Franklin Elementary.
the new, yeah, the new Franklin Elementary.
I guess what I'm trying to say is the neighbors in that area, the accessibility of the existing playground at Franklin Elementary is different than what they're realizing and experiencing now with the annex. So that's probably the disconnect. You see what I'm saying? Like, I call it the cow out the window. It's like everybody likes the view that they get when they buy where they buy, but
Oh,
they
yes,
never
ma'am.
know that that cow's always going to be there. And in this case, that would be a playground.
A very small playground. Yeah, our biggest, largest playgrounds are on the Downs Boulevard side of Franklin Elementary.
Okay.
They're between the railroad tracks and the building.
Understood.
And there's 3 massive play structures.
But the neighbors that I've heard from are referencing a different playground.
Yes, ma'am. That's
Okay.
correct.
That's what I'm
They're
trying to
referencing
understand.
a green space and really a pre-K swings and a couple of.
That used to be fenced
climbing.
in at one time.
It is fenced in, yes.
Did an Easter egg hunt there one time.
That's correct. It is still
23
fenced in.
years ago.
Yes.
Okay. And so one other question, not to, because we don't have a design, obviously, or a development plan. When you talk about all of the new homes would have to front the street, you've got a square here. So I worry about, well, I guess it's not designated as a street right now, but where Fairground ends, and you've got that huge paved area between both buildings.
It's a
How do you-
parking lot right now.
Right, it's like, I don't know how you would activate that because it's not a street. Where would those, you see what I'm saying? Is it gonna be?
Good point.
That's a question that you may not have an answer to.
Well, that would be up to the developer.
That'd kind of be a development plan
Okay.
topic, I would think.
Go ahead, Alderman Banks.
This is now Ward 4. Sorry, Jason. But met with some concerned neighbors as well, and I think he brought up a good point, which I hadn't thought about, which is, I mean, Franklin Special is going to sell this.
Yes.
It's going to happen. Actually, moving to R4, there are lots, as we've heard from other CI possible zoning changes at this board. There are some pretty unfriendly uses for a neighborhood that it could be. And in that point, if you sell it to someone who wants it for CI, they could use it all, within the zoning ordinance. They could build whatever facility on that green space as it is a CI.
Correct. The playground is going to probably go away regardless of who we sell it to.
So that's an interesting point, but so that leads me to think that, I think we know this is probably, though, not going to be something that's CI. I've heard there's some institutional interest, but nothing concrete. But I would like staff to engage, though, and you all, and maybe we can have some conversations about how we can figure out, because there's parkland dedication fees that a developer is going to have to provide for this neighborhood. And this is not your problem, I know. But I think this is, talking about how staff can solve this for the neighbors and for others concerned, is how can we figure out something creative? Because the whole street work is going to have to be redesigned. I mean, the street, my kids go there. It's not intuitive. But I think there's a solution here that I think leads to the sale of property, the development of some homes, but also having some open space in the area that I think the community really wishes to have it. I know, again, not necessarily your problem.
Yeah.
But I say that for the staff to engage on that and come up with maybe a solution where we could check the box.
Yeah, Alderman Baggett, I met today, had a very productive meeting with several of the homeowners in that area. And I listened to their concerns, and we agreed to approach the problem collaboratively. We agreed to work together to find, in your words, that solution that is out there. We just have to figure out what it is.
Yeah, thank you.
I would just to add on to that, first of all, the parkland structure provides some tools to help facilitate that. There's some benefits to that could be amenities to that potential development and to the broader neighborhood. So I think you're right. There are some tools there. And it is always good advice whenever you look at a rezoning to look at all the permissible uses within that category, even with or without a development plan, because all that can change. You're allowing any of those allowable uses there. And so I think that is wise advice for everyone to consider. If you keep it that way, what potential uses are you opening up to? And that's a important consideration.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Go ahead.
How long has it been on the market?
We actually have not marketed the property yet.
Do you not think it has equal value as an institutional use as it would a residential, if not even greater, since that is such a limited option in our community?
Not with the existing building. The building is in such disrepair.
Robert went there, you gotta think.
You gotta think about that. You gotta think about Robert there in the 60s, so you picture that and you will want to tear it down.
I know, because older buildings can have some interesting things in them,
Yeah,
definitely.
there's encapsulated asbestos in the building. There is desperate need of a roof that we are using duct tape currently to keep it dry. I'm saying that facetiously, but not much.
It's actually a can of Flex Seal.
But the building, yes, ma'am. The building is in significant disrepair, and that's the situation we're in.
But you don't think the land value alone is equal to under the current zoning as it would be under an R4?
That's not the advice and counsel we've received as far as the value of the property is. The value of the property is most beneficial to the district as an R4 zoning.
All right, thank you.
Robert, the last time I was in the building, which has been several years, I found your name on a couple of walls over there.
Were you in the bathroom, Clyde?
Alderman Potts, you've been waiting so patiently, and the
And
Ward 4 alderman quickly jumped in front of you, so I think we'll probably go to you.
I'll be very short, and I will reassure Alderman Baggett, is all of the residents and neighbors that are right there on Fairground Street and also on Cannon, I'm really pleased to hear that you've got those collaborative conversations taking place, because this has been close and near to them, and I've received those emails and those telephone calls. So thank you for doing that.
Alderman Brown.
Thank you. Generally speaking, I appreciate the R4. I really do. I appreciate that we're trying to match what's there. I appreciate I appreciate the restrictions that are there. I actually watched the planning commission meeting, so I was able to hear a lot of that feedback. I guess my biggest fear of it would be, we're looking at zoning without looking at development plans. We sell that property, developer comes in, says, I can't make that work in the R4, and then suddenly we're looking at, the PD and all of that, and I just, then we're into a situation we don't want to be in, I don't think, in that area. And so in some ways, I guess we can't control that. It's not your problem at the end of the day, to your point. I guess I would love to know financially, in an R4, can somebody actually make R4 work, considering the road issues that are there, the challenge that exists there? They got to tear down a building. I could see a financial situation where R4 no longer works for somebody, and we're looking at something different on that property, far different than what we would really want to have there. So that's my only concern going into it.
Alderman Peterson.
Well, first of all, whenever the comment was that R4 doesn't just mean 4 units per acre there, in other words, a fourth of an acre, because I think you just said that you would not be able to have a lot that was less than 6,400 square feet. Is that what you said?
6,500.
6,500 square feet. But wouldn't that mean that you could have as many as 7 lots that size on 1 acre?
Pretty close.
Yes. You think about it. 43,560?
It's under, the way the ordinance is written, it's 75% of the average, but in no case shall it be less than 6,500 square feet. So the average is what really determines the lot size.
Okay, so, and I did not look at the ones on Cannon, but I did look at the ones that are on Battle there, and some of those say Lot 9 and part of Lot 8, and another one says Lot 7 and part of Lot 8. In other words, these were purchased with a lot and a half, kind of, you know, there on Battle, instead of just one there. So I'm wondering how, whenever we're talking about the lot sizes, would we be looking at Battle, or we would be looking at Cannon, or what would we be looking at? If you're talking about 75% of the surrounding. You see what I mean?
It really depends on where the homes are fronting, and that goes back to the road network, because if they're just installing lots where the road frontage currently is, it would just be Battle and Cannon. But more than likely, a developer would want to have a new road through this property, and then we would look to both Cannon and Battle and kind of go from there about making everything consistent with what's been established.
And we're also talking about almost 8 acres. So, you know, even if you're thinking 4 units to the acre, that's, 32 houses would have to be worked out some way on this, and
Well, less a significant amount for the infrastructure,
Exactly.
roads and, yeah.
Yes,
So it'd be
exactly.
less than that.
Exactly. And another thing would be, I don't know what we'd be talking about for, you know, parkland development fees and things like that, but the city and the Franklin Special School District are working together now on park and fields and everything out along 96 West. And so one wonders if there might not be some way to work with, you know, some kind of parkland type thing with some of this.
Yeah. I think you're absolutely correct, Alderman Peterson, and in my conversations today with homeowners, we talked about that, and I talked about the plan, what was going on, and encouraged them to learn more about it from the city's perspective to see if this would be something that they would like to further discuss.
Well,
And finally,
you're not paying the
Alderman
parkland
Peterson still got it there, Alderman.
I'm sorry.
Give her
Just
a
one more
minute.
thing. But today, whenever we came here, we had something from the special school district, you know, and the last, the last sentence on the next to the last paragraph says, we understand the community's interest in green space and continue to provide after-school access to Franklin Elementary.
Yes, ma'am.
You know, multiple playgrounds, basketball court, full-size soccer field, and paved track, as we've done for many years. Whenever I was out there, I did not go to what I call the new Franklin Elementary and look, because I noticed, as was mentioned, all of this other is really fenced in and everything. What about the property around?
It is. I was the principal of Franklin Elementary for 12 years before accepting this chair a couple of years ago. The playground is currently fenced in, but it's not locked, fenced in. It's accessible. There's no locks on the gates or anything like that.
Okay.
So
And so-
after school hours, I can attest 12 years of seeing the community walking the track and moms pushing strollers around the track every afternoon, and children playing on the playground without my permission every afternoon. We just opened, it was accessible to the community.
Well, now, is that this part that we're talking about
No,
selling
ma'am.
here, or the other part?
No, ma'am, that's what I'm just speaking
Okay.
of is the Franklin Elementary School playground and track area, which we've worked on developing over the last, I was in the playground business along with being a principal for 4 to 5 years of raising money to build playgrounds. And we have some really nice play structures. We have a music area, we have a natural play area, we've got the biggest, tallest elementary play structure we could find. So we've got a lot of options for the community to play after school, because of course during school,
Sure.
the priority goes to the students.
And that would be on the part
When-
that's kind of closest to Downs? Is
Yes,
that it?
ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I know.
Alderman Barnhill.
Well, I was going to ask, I mean, you're not going to pay the parkland dedication fees anyway if you sell the property, are you?
No, sir.
You hope not. Okay. So I'm not sure that we're asking you a question about parkland dedication fees has anything to do with our rezoning here.
Right.
It
It'd be
has
for the
something to
developer.
do with whoever buys the property.
Correct. Which they would have to go through the planning department again.
Yes.
I would just say that we've just got a unique situation here with the public taxpayer paid entity, the city, and I think the collaboration is unique outside of a regular developer situation. Right, and I think that's what's important. I mean, I understand what you're saying. It doesn't affect our decision here, but it does affect the neighbors and, and so I appreciate y'all engaging, and staff and Vernon I've spoke with before. It doesn't require us, but it does require us to engage on that topic. But they're not gonna pay the fees. The
That's
developer,
correct.
yeah.
I did have one last question to ask. Why did the staff recommend R4?
Again, just because it's, the surrounding area is R4, and a lot of our historic residential subdivisions, especially in the downtown core, are also R4, which is, again, contextual, so any new lot would have to fit in with that average of the established form and character of the block. I'll also add that this is within the Central Franklin overlay, which does have additional regulations for new building form, height, style, again, to blend in with what's been built already.
All right, we need to move on, if it's okay with everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks
Yes,
for
sir.
being
Thank
here.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.
Were there anybody else wanting to speak on this? No, they didn't.
I didn't have any speaker
Thank you.
cards.
Just checking.
You're a little late. Bring it here.
Sorry, childcare.
You have 2 minutes.
Podium's best.
That's fine, go ahead.
Thank you all for your time. This is Miller. We live right next.
Go to the podium so we can hear you. There's a mic there.
Hey, my name is Jared Sullivan, born, raised in Franklin. With Franklin High. This is my daughter Miller. We live on Figures Drive, right down the street from the park. Met with Tim today about the property. We understand the position that Franklin Special School District is in. They need to sell that property to build the new Eddie Lane complex. We get it. But we also hold that lot on that park on Figures Drive, the big field, is essential to our community. It's been a park. It's been open to the public since 1952. Before that, it was the county fairgrounds. I went back to the archive and found it. It was sold to the city leaders in 1857 or something. My point is, it's been enjoyed by the public for a long time. And yes, there's other parks. It's kind of in a drainage ditch. The big field is almost a mile from our house. From our houses on Figure. It's not close. It's not comparable. There's nothing compares to the field. Trying to save the park.
What park are you talking about? There's no
On
park.
Figures Drive. The field. It's a big field. It's a big field.
That's all it is.
There's not a comparable big field next to Franklin, next to the new Franklin Elementary School. So we would love to see the city work with Franklin Special School District to officially to turn it to buy part of it and turn it to a park. We'd love to see that. It'll make everyone very happy, and it will continue to benefit the public from here on out. I'm running out of time. Thank you all, and I do appreciate Franklin Special School District and their willingness to meet with us. I really do appreciate it.
Okay, I've got 2 other ones, and again, for the audience, we generally take these cards at the beginning. So, Mr. Magley, you're next, and followed by Forrest Latta. You each have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My name is Tom Magley, and I am the broker of record for this particular piece of property. And you can throw rocks at me because a big part of this whole process has been under my recommendations. from a brokerage standpoint, this property needs to fit within the overlay plan for the city of Franklin. We felt like it was better to look at the property as we'd taken it to R4 than turning it over to a developer who would try to lean forward, push you, and so forth. And in my presentation, and Joyce is my co-broker over here, in the presentation, we said that we wanted to avoid the developers that would come in the door with the what I call non-starter projects. Those were the townhouses. I've turned, they call it, can we do some townhouses? Well, we do infield townhouses. We do tall skinnies. We do this. Doesn't work. You got to stay within the plan. And so that was my recommendation for the Franklin Special School District to take it to R4. And I am very, very sorry. My son had a birthday on the 23rd of July, and nobody was there at the Planning Commission to talk about it, and that is our mistake. I think actually if it had been explained to them, they would have passed it. Thank you.
I'll be pretty brief here. I've heard several times tonight, we know this is not your problem. Whose problem is it exactly? Like, who is actually accountable for what we're looking at here? Our biggest concern right now is just the uncertainty before taking a major step of rezoning here. This can snowball into a lot of other things. We have a lot of things in common. We all agree that the annex needs to go. But we've been hearing about certain considerations, amenities, sidewalks, stuff like that. It doesn't even exist in the current neighborhoods. We're talking about this for a prospective neighborhood. That to me is we're not even being considered here. We're considering a field. Also, as a parent of a FES student, Dr. Esslinger, nice to see you again. I think FSSD does an amazing job. They're not an enemy here. We don't mean to make them an enemy. Appreciated the conversation with Tim today. We are interested in finding a collaborative resolution here. I do want us to slow down a little bit before we go down a road we can't turn around on, though. That's our biggest concern. Density. I know R4 doesn't mean 4 houses per acre. In this case, it could mean potentially quite a bit more than 4 houses per acre, correct? We're talking about the average lot size around there is about 8 to a quarter acre. I'm pretty sure you're going to find that he can fit more than 4 per acre. I know this is the developer's problem, right? This has got to come back to the planning thing. But again, I want to know who's accountable to the taxpayers. Effectively, this land is owned by FSSD, but in principle, it's owned by the taxpayers. So that's all I want to do is get up here and say, hey, look, let's not pass the buck. Let's iron out some answers. Let's come up with a solution that works for everybody in the community. So, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, we're ready to move on. Item 5 is the development plan for the cottages at 509 Hill Drive PUD subdivision for property located south of West Main Street and west of Hill Drive on .56 acres located at 509 Hill Drive, establishing public hearing August 9, 2022.
Thank you. This development plan for the cottages at 509 Hill Drive proposes 4 single-family lots and 1 open space lot. Envision Franklin places this property in the neighborhood mixed-use design concept, which does support the proposed development. This plan was actually previously approved by the board, mayor, and aldermen in 2015, but recently lost its vesting and with the entitlements to build. What's coming through now is essentially the same plan with some minor modifications to meet our current zoning ordinance regulations, including required on-street parking. It does propose 4 single-family lots with a shared driveway for access to all 4 rear-loaded garages. And the applicant is proposing to use the same zoning of the Plan District 8, so there's no accompanying zoning request, which is just the revised development plan. So staff recommends approval, as does Planning Commission, and happy to answer any questions.
Did it?
Go ahead, Vice Mayor.
Well, no, I'm just concerned you said on-street parking. Oh, my Lord, where? Have you been on the street? That sounded really rude. I'm sorry, Joey. It's not your fault.
I've lived here since 1989.
I know. I apologize. No, it's on-street parking is absolutely. I don't even understand that. And we require it, correct?
It is required per our street standards with the new development or residential development. So it would be parallel parking. If you want to speak more to that, because I know y'all were actually working on that more than.
Yeah, I mean, does it come off of the street where it's going to be embedded into your development, or are you planning on using what's existing there?
It would be
Or what do you
within.
have to do? I
Go ahead
guess?
and
Let me
introduce
introduce
yourself,
myself.
and then you can.
Chris Wood with Kaiser Voger Design, we're the applicant. So the parallel parking, we're proposing to put 4 parallel parking spaces. 1 closer to the market side, and then 3 further away. And they would be within the right-of-way. And so they'd be 8 feet wide, 22 feet long per the street standards. But everything would be within the right-of-way.
I'm very familiar with the street, and it just terrifies me that, I mean, there's already a problem on Hill Street with the width of the road and the infrastructures that's there. Are you being asked to also put a sidewalk in?
Yes.
Yeah, there needs to be some type of easement that expands this little skinny road. Like I was there today, and I was backing out of the triplex across the street from you, and there was a car parked right there at the end, and I didn't know that I would even be able to get out the driveway.
So I think when the parallel parking spaces are added, it'd be in addition to the asphalt that is there.
So inside your
It'd be-
lot line,
no,
not
it'd
in
be-
the roadway.
It would not be in the roadway, but it'd be within the right-of-way that's already established for the street.
Indented into the,
You can't put the
like,
parking
would you
space
go
in the road.
into the?
We would add asphalt toward our property.
Okay, so it's indentation almost, it's off the
Yes,
road.
yes, ma'am. Yes,
Larger than the existing road.
Okay, got it.
yes.
So that's correct. It's my understanding from what Jimmy said at Planning Commission that the travel lane width will remain what it is
Yeah.
today. The right-of-way is wider than the existing travel lane, so the parking spaces go into the additional right-of-way, but will not restrict the existing travel lanes of the roadway today.
On that, the existing travel lanes are already, so I think that the point, I think the only point short is the capital investment committee and the staff need to really look at that street. I don't know how we got here. I mean, I know how we got here, but we're here, and it is an old road, and it needs that whole. We can't make it work. We don't need to make it worse. And on both sides, if you do one side where the ended parking, I'm going too long. But the point is, just the capital investment committee needs to look at. We need to look at how to solve that problem. It's a mess, and this could make it worse.
Well, development's permanent, and it's hard to go backward, so I'm concerned about it.
Anybody else? Item 6.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On slide 7, when we talk about doing the indentation, I'm looking at it and I zoomed in, and as everyone was talking about it, there's a drainage swale right there. So will your indentation go on top of that, and then how will that be addressed if you're going to cut into that property?
We haven't really got to the engineering part of it, but I would assume that when the asphalt is laid in there, that it will be created to allow the water to flow toward the south to that existing waterway.
Okay.
So, I mean, originally, we didn't have any parking proposed,
Yeah.
but per the new zoning ordinance, we're required to bring it up to current standards.
Right, and we don't require on-street parking for all new residential units. It has to do where the lot width is a very narrow lot, and that's when these specific requirements come into play, because there's usually not enough parking for the structure on the site themselves or for guest parking. So we only have that where you have so many units in a line in a much shorter distance because the lot widths are more narrow. So it does come into play in this development, but it's not a universal standard for all residential units. It has to do with the width of these specific lots is why that requirement is in place.
I will say that the architecture proposed does include attached garages that will be accessed from the rear.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So the units aren't going to be intended to be using those parallel spaces. They have 2 cars for each unit.
I'd agree that that's generally the case, but what we've also seen across the board is you also have teenagers driving cars. You might have more than 2 cars per unit. You might have, people throwing parties. So it's more of a requirement that addresses more special kind of situations that we have seen arise across the community. We do understand that the primary people living in the structures will be utilizing their garage parking or parking pads for the most part behind the house, but you never know, and we don't want people parking on the street where there are narrow travel lanes, whereas these additional spaces provide an offset parking area.
Item 6, Resolution 2022-38, a resolution requesting a referendum for the annexation of property located east of the intersection of Paytonsville Road and Pratt Lane and outside of the southeastern part of the Franklin urban growth boundary. And as you're looking at that, you can talk about the plan of services and the rezoning,
Yes.
the whole ball of wax.
They
That
all-
would be 6, 7, and 8.
They all go hand in hand. So yes, this is for an annexation request for property in the Goose Creek Basin that is located outside of the urban growth boundary and located east of the intersection of Paytonsville Road and Pratt Lane. The map is there on the screens for you to see. Annexation in areas outside the UGB cannot occur until a referendum has been held that has a majority of the property owners requesting annexation vote to have their property annexed into the city. This resolution authorizes the request for the Williamson County Election Commission to hold the referendum on November 8th of this year in conjunction with the state general election. A full timeline of this annexation process is included in your materials. There are no major issues to consider with the plan of services. This does help fill, as you can see, the green, lighter green area around it is city property, so this does fill in a significant gap there. So staff does recommend approval of all 3 items, as does Planning Commission.
See everybody smiling, that's nice. How about item 9, ordinance 2022-06, an ordinance to amend the Title 16 of the City of Franklin Municipal Code by adding sections 16-120, honorary street names.
Mark's going to walk you through this, but this is a formalization of an action we took related to a specific street, now to expand it to a broader city program overall. Mark will take you through it, and we'll be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you, sir. So as I remember seeing some of you, at least, who were able to make it to Justice Clark's honorary designation of 4th Avenue. It was a great event. Thank you all for being there. So this was sort of the catalyst to establish a program to, possibly do these in the future for other honorary designations. Similar to Justice Clark's designation, we had someone approach us with information related to her life. With this program, we are looking to have an application process that goes through the city administrator. The way it's written now, and we've discussed this in a previous work session, that staff would do the review. There was a discussion of identifying a committee that may do so, or chairs of committees put together to do that. We're happy to do it in any form or fashion, although I don't know that it really needs to be codified in municipal code. So the way it's written right now, it says staff review for recommendation to the board, and we could modify that. I think Alderman Baggett, you were one of the aldermen who talked about that. So I don't believe that it would necessarily need to be in the ordinance itself, but we can set something up that would really guide us on how that happens with your, with your input. So the other pieces are we only want one the draft ordinance provides for up to one designation a year. We don't want to have a flurry of these requests coming in. And of course, one designation per intersection. We don't want to have cross streets and so there's, yeah. So and similar to the signs that we have for Justice Clark, they're proposed to be blue background with the city seal and white lettering. So if you've driven up and down 4th Avenue, you can see those pretty prominently displayed. One other piece that is in this draft ordinance is there is a 20-year period in which the signs would either go away or they could be renewed through resolution. There's multiple ways to do this. One way we could look at it, the ordinance currently provides for the board to remove an honorary designation through a resolution. We can eliminate the 20-year kind of expiration date on it, and the board at the time can choose to eliminate honorary designation or not. So there's different ways to approach that as well. So the review panel and the 20-year sort of expiration date on the honorary designations were two pieces that I don't think we dug into very deeply the last time, so I wanted to highlight those, but happy to answer any questions.
And that 20-year renewal concept is one you've seen in other cities as
Yes.
well, just to have some opportunity to say, well, do you want to continue it? Do you want to honor others? That I think is part of the rationale, so that's something we'd be interested in your feedback on.
Right, and I've seen...
You have to have a mechanism to make sure you think of that 20 years down the line, which could be a little bit of a wrinkle,
Yeah,
but.
I've seen it as low as 5 years, actually a year, but those were pretty rare. But 10 years seem to be pretty common, but have also seen 20. So
See smiling faces. Item 10, I'm sorry, Alderman Barnhill?
No,
You're agreeing.
I'm agreeing.
How about ordinance 2022-03 and amend Title 16, Chapter 5 of the City of Franklin Municipal Code Special Events and Temporary Street Closures to address public gatherings and expression events?
So we did some additional review of this based on feedback and discussion we had a few meetings ago related to an update of our public gatherings and public expression ordinance that was put in place in late 2020. As we shared with you then, we've had about 27 permitted public expression or demonstration events in that time frame. And that's about a 21-month period. We've learned some things as we've gone through that. We've seen some other areas that we felt would need to be addressed. A lot of that remains the same. Where we made some adjustments relate to the restriction timeframe in the downtown area. We had talked about a full weekend restriction. We've modified that to really reflect the weekend evening timeframe. So that would be Friday night starting at 5, running through 7 a.m. on Saturday, and Saturday night starting at 5 p.m., running through 7 a.m. Sunday. So we narrowed that focus. We also clarified that a public demonstration permit would not be issued where an existing special event permit had already been granted. So in the middle of Main Street Festival, you couldn't have a public gathering demonstration on the square. Somewhat may have gone without saying, but we wanted to make that clear that was an upfront recognition that conflict should not exist. Other elements that remain the same get at the use of amplification, regardless of size of the event, automatically triggers permitting. What else, Shauna? There was a couple others, please.
And more than once per month.
Oh, yeah, multiple times in a month, again, regardless of size, triggers a permitting mechanism as well.
That's not to say they wouldn't get it.
Yes.
It would just let us know that that's the intent, and we'd have to look at it.
Yeah, because you have the size only had been the primary governor of when it got a permit, and now we're layering on amplification, ongoing or regular events, whether it's weekly, more than once a month, that would also require that permit consideration. Doesn't disallow it, it just says that feeds into a permit process as well, just so that that other elements may be considered there.
And so as you'll see in section 16-515, it says historic district, and Eric and I kind of talked about this. It's sort of vague right now, but my thought and my read after being here with you guys a month ago was more Main Street and not outside of Main Street. So kind of interested to hear what your thoughts are on that. Generally, people shop on and around Main Street, and I think that's why we're looking at prohibiting expression events during those times. But if you think it should go outside of Main Street, I'm interested in that, or maybe we say downtown district, but that I would look for some feedback on that.
Yeah, because the way we wrote it said historic district, and there are 7 different historic districts. So
That's
we
right.
need to hone in on downtown, how we want to define that, I think is our intent. So
The-
that's a
the
wording
main-
thing on our end.
The Main Street commercial in the zoning ordinance, I think that's a,
That could be a good way to look at it,
It
yeah.
could be.
That
It's
might
like-
be a good way to do that. I mean, obviously, you want to incorporate the square, which is the primary place people want to have a public expression event. So that's our intent, but I think that's maybe a good way to define it.
Alderman Bag, you're not Alderman Baggett. You're not in that 4th ward, are you?
Please, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, Alderman Potts.
Could either of you just verify for me? I feel like for some reason I'm having like a time trigger right now. Like it's either 7 a.m. or it's 8 a.m. where there's commercial institutions and vehicles are not supposed to operate, dump trucks, things like that.
the noise ordinance?
The noise ordinance. So if the noise ordinance, does that need to align with this?
It's a different kind of thing, and the purpose is different. So for public expression events, we're really regulating time, place, and manner based on safety.
Well, the reason why I ask is, we talked about noise amplification, right? So if they have noise amplification, they get the permit, and they get down there at 7 a.m. down here in the historic area or on the historic shopping area, if you will, and they're using that noise amplification, and you've got residential areas in that area, they can do that. But your commercial businesses are restricted from doing that because it's before said time. So that's what I really want to draw the question to the board on is, should it align with that?
Well, you've
If
got-
there's
yeah.
noise amplification.
You've got a permitting process, so that could be part of your consideration.
That's right.
Okay.
Compliance with that.
Our special events might be going, like setting up earlier than 7 a.m., but they're not making a lot of noise. So I see your point, but we might be able to say, you can start setting up, but you can't actually start amplifying or making noise until 8. That would be something we definitely could look into.
Yeah, and I'm thinking generators, but I'm also thinking about freedom of expression and, people rallying together. And somebody's had a little bit too much coffee early in the morning and gets excited on the amplification.
That's true.
Okay.
The other element I want to touch on, Alderman Baggett had asked us to look at compliance with standards and responsibility of applicants. This obviously deals more with the public gatherings and expressions, which is a specific, separate from special events. But the existing special events provides for the responsibility of permittees, applicants to comply with all laws, and provides for responsibility around safety, compliance with laws, those elements. Does provide for the authority of city administrator, police chief, and fire chief to disband or forfeit that permit should there be issues related to the law or concerns around public safety. So that exists in there. It is broad in its language, but that's what we have there. Obviously, the ability to have that be a consideration in future permitting. We've got also the added wrinkle that we've put in the last few years of long-term permitting, where there's multiple year scheduling commitments. That all could be factored into compliance issues around those elements. So that's kind of what's there. And there's been some discussion as we've looked at this around how the event application is structured itself to emphasize that responsibility. And so we look for feedback and guidance you have there as well.
The only more specific item was just the adding for both applications for a special event, and it does mention in the ordinance that, you know, applicants for expression events and for special events should follow state law. I think setting some better expectations on the application regarding those types of items and behaviors as defined in state law relating to, you know, not family-friendly type activities. And I think we can get more specific. It's 7 o'clock, but want to just make sure that's in there on both the special event and the public expression. It's just for, I mean, again, we talked about pilgrimage. We talked about some other events, and there's just so much happening in our town, and when we see those applications, I mean, there just needs to be clear communication with the applicant, what our standards are, and then an ability for that dialogue to happen on the front end with us and with staff, so that everyone has the same expectations of what the event is going to include from a programming standpoint. But I think that's a very fair, reasonable thing to do, and everyone, I think, will appreciate that, not having surprises from the permittee side as well, setting those clear expectations.
Alderman Berger?
Do we need to specify in our ordinance specifically what state law says, or do we just say that we will follow state laws for their parks? How do we do that? And also behavior and people's different expressions that are not family friendly, no matter who they are. I don't really care what group they are or what organization or group rents or uses our parks or our public spaces or our sidewalks. But I do care how the behavior comes across in our town. And I do care when children are around, and I also care about how people conduct themselves. And I want that in there very specifically, so we don't have a problem in the future with any group A to Z who wants to use our public spaces. And do we need to spell these things out? I'm glad to write them out. I'm glad to present them to you, to present to the board. I have some thoughts of my own that I'd like to write out. In fact, I have been. But also want to know about state law. Do we need to spell that out ourselves, or do we just say we follow state law?
I would not advise that you spell it out for a couple reasons. One, state law changes over time. I know I sent this to Patrick earlier too. State law will change. New laws will be codified, which will make other laws move around. So you might be citing one section and you think that's good, and then years later another section's added, this one moves down, and now you're citing to the wrong law. So to call out one as more important than the other also doesn't make a lot of sense, because if you break laws as either an applicant or someone who's attending the event and it becomes a problem, it doesn't matter which one it is, it's a problem. And so we need to look at it, and we say all state laws and all local laws, and I think that really covers you. If there's something that you would like to talk about specifically, then let's sit down and talk and maybe see if there's some other additional language we can add. You know, we do have to be careful about, you know, the right to free expression and free speech. And so when someone does have a special event permit, or probably more likely a public gathering and expression event, they're going to say things that might make other people mad, but that's their right to do that.
Yeah, well,
The other thing that might be a differentiation too is what's in the ordinance and then what we provide in the application process.
right.
They don't have to be exactly the same. So if you want to emphasize something for your consideration as you review and want to understand an event,
Exactly.
we can facilitate that without maybe trying to spell out
Right.
every potential concern in an ordinance. That gets a little challenging. So it could be something we could do to help you better understand the event that doesn't necessarily have to try to codify every potential bad thing. So, I mean, I think that's may help
But
with consideration.
But for like pilgrimage, we don't know who the performers are when you approve each
Right.
year. So, you know, it's,
Well-
if you get too granular, then we'll never know, and it'll cause problems as far as
Okay,
like proving that.
so going back a few years, if someone takes off all their clothes except their underwear, to me, that's unacceptable in a family-friendly event. So I want to make sure, and that was numerous years ago, I was told, I want to make sure that we have enough muscle power in our ordinance to be very specific to say, you know, these things are unacceptable, but you can't spell out every single thing. I understand that. So where's the rub? Where do we, you know, as I said, I'm not looking at pilgrimage, I'm not looking at pride, I'm not looking at any of these things specifically, although I certainly could. I could certainly point those out. But it's not really important to me to do that right now. What's important is A to Z, how do we control that in our ordinances to make sure that we are truly family-friendly in our parks, in our public spaces. People want to do other things, they can go to private spaces all day long. But when we are approving their use of our public spaces, our taxpayer dollars, I want to make sure that we are sensible and that we are reasonable, but we also are family-friendly.
Now, this isn't exactly what we're here to talk about tonight, which is
Right.
the expression events, but
Where's that
every
play?
special, yeah, it kind of
leads
blends
into
in.
it, so where do you?
The special events come to you. I mean, the applicants sit here in front of you and ask for a permit. You can talk to them, you can ask them questions. And during the SEAT project or process, the special event advisory team, if there's things you want us to talk about, I mean, it's a huge group of people that sit together with them and talk through their event. Usually by that time, they know a little bit more information about what's going to happen. There are lots of ways. You hold the power because every year you grant the permit or not.
Well, I don't want to pick and choose every year about, oh, these 20 things, or maybe another group, oh, we thought of 5 other things that we didn't think about for your group. That's why I think our ordinances need to be consistent. They need to be plain, they need to be spelled out, and they need to be reasonable. But again, we have a community, and it should be decent and acceptable and safe and all those things. And I want to be able to make sure that we're addressing that properly in our ordinances, in a proper legal way, so everybody is very clear. So when one group comes in here and sits down, we're not saying, oh, well, here's these 20 things, or then we have that ability to question each of these people. Well, we could be here an hour with these people, Group A, Group B, it might be a faith-based event, it might be a political event, it might be something, you know, different, totally different.
I think that's why I'm referencing the application process, gives you that consistent basis to ask the same questions of the applicants without necessarily trying to anticipate everything in the ordinance.
Yeah.
I think you can do both, and the
We're gonna talk.
application helps complement that.
We're going to talk a little bit more. When do you anticipate this coming to us for a vote?
Whenever you want
Yeah.
it to come to you. It's written
We need
now.
some time.
It's ready.
Yeah.
Well, this
We need-
piece right
we need-
here,
yeah.
this piece right here, I think is fine.
Yeah, this is a little different than the special event, which I think is what you're talking
So
about.
maybe we need to write that in the special events, right?
Yeah, it would be a different section and a different,
Mm-hmm.
you know, process. This is just specific to someone who might want to protest or have a demonstration
Mm-hmm.
and not the special events. That's what this is about. So if you want to make some change, I would suggest we do it through a different ordinance or through the application.
And I might bring you something
And
else
this
to
is
add on.
downtown.
Yeah, this is,
Well, this is
Well-
downtown and special, this is
Special events
public
anywhere.
gatherings and expression events.
Anywhere.
It's got a specific related to downtown, but it also talks citywide about how those.
Should be in all our
are handled.
parks.
Quick
Special
comment.
events are in a different ordinance.
All our public spaces.
Alderman Brown.
I know we're over time. Quick comment is similar to what I said at the last work session. I think there's what's in the ordinance, but I think there's also just a process improvement for us on this. Not to suggest by any stretch of the imagination that the information wasn't available, but a lot of times the applications aren't in the packet. You know, it's pretty much just a staff recommendation and an approval. I think if we're going to have conversations about our special events, I would ask the staff just to really think about what does that process looks like that helps us to make an informed, smart
Yeah.
decision for the public Because I will tell you, I certainly am looking at every permit now very differently than I have been. And so I think we need help in understanding what a process could look like. That's it.
And I only have one question, and I'm sorry, along these same lines, is there, and I would need somebody to bring this to me later, granting the permit, they've got the permit, if they get a warning, if they do something and we get granular, which I kind of like what you're recommending to stay at that local state law level, but if we go to the granular level, is there a warning process? Is there a strike one, strike two, strike three at the event type of process so I can better understand that? Or is it just, sorry you did that and we're revoking your permit? So if I could get some information on that, that would be great.
They're both kind of treated differently, so it kind of depends on what you're talking about versus public gathering and expression or special event. In the middle of a special event, technically we could shut it down, but it would have to be a pretty big deal, especially if it were a ticketed event, because then we have issues of liability and financial stuff. But every year, those requests come back to you. You know, I know a couple years ago we had with Pilgrimage the ingress and egress of cars, and that was a real big concern. And there was a lot of scrutiny to that, and that required a lot of conversation. So it would be similar, I think, for that. For public gathering and expression events, the city administrator, the police chief, the fire chief can shut it down immediately if there's violations of the permit or some other safety aspect.
The other aspect is special events tend to be reoccurring. Public expressions and gatherings tend to be one at a time or maybe a series, but then that's kind of it. Not all cases, but more often than not. So they have a little bit different to them. I think, you know, we monitor in our special events team, we treat them as incident command situations. So we have an incident commander, we have people throughout the event monitoring the event, public safety, other issues that are a concern. When there's an issue, we work through our team and directly with the event organizer to fix it. It's like a notice of violation, fix it, they fix it. More often than not, they do. If there's an ongoing concern, we deal with it. You wouldn't likely pull the plug on an entire event. You might pull the plug on an aspect of it, quite frankly. I mean, that's what I would see. Doesn't happen very often, but it's part of what we have a responsibility to do as we implement the event with the organizer.
Thank you.